Hello, everyone. Hi, how is everyone today? Thank you all for being with us. Our guest, Andrea, is here, Jenny is here, Anneke, and Arthur.
Hi, Bill.
And welcome everyone to the last show, the last broadcast of this book series, The Art of Peace and Happiness by Rupert Spira. And I have asked all of us to be on the call together for the last section. It's I would call it chapter 6, or the essays that are titled Experience. And I'm expecting that Kimberly might be with us in a call-in way, so she might just call in on the call-in feature. I'm hoping that she can, and we'll get started here. And what the way we're going to do this is that uh, I'm going to ask each of our co presenters to take a couple of different sections. I've already sent them the essays that I would like for them, and I did it randomly. I just sat and I got the name came in and the essay came in. I didn't do any selective process other than intuiting what everyone would share from, and so that's the selective process that was used here. And each of us to take either one or two of the subjects that are in the last section on experience. And before we get started, we may have another book club, study club on the book Aware of Being Aware uh, by Rupert Spira, and it may be in August. I'm going to wait and get a consensus from the guests, the co-hosts, and see if we have enough interest in it. And if we do, it'll be a call-in type of a book study, and we'll be able to do it from wherever we are in the world, and from your computer or your smartphone. And that's an idea that's sort of churning, and that would also be on Wednesdays at 12 Eastern, and it would be in the month of August. And this is our final book study for The Art of Peace and Happiness. It I'm going to read it again. I'm just going to this is almost like a Bible. This is like a the sacredness of the Bible. Only I know it's not sacred, but it's got so much good content in it. I'm gonna go back into this one before I go into volume two, which is our next book study, the intimacy of all experience. And Arthur is kind of tickling my ear to pick up the Perfume of Silence by Francis Lucille, and we'll see what happens
Yeah,
with that
it's good.
next. But this book has been such a rich uh, invitation for me to just soak in the expression, the articulate uh, way that Rupert shares this truth. I can't tell you how much how happy how grateful I am that we used it for this book study. And this last chapter is no different from the first ones. It's just more of the same expressed in a different way. And this gives you a deeper investigation of the experience that's offered. And this week, I want to ask each of us to sort of give what's your take on this section that I've given you and Jenny. This is going to be for you to express on the first one is the intimacy of experiencing, and then as much as you have to share on that, and then the other one that I've asked you to look at is happiness is the highest spiritual practice. And the mic is all yours. Thank you for being here.
Well, those were two lovely sections. Actually, they're all lovely sections in part six. But I think what stood out for me from really the whole of part six was the dissolving quality of the teaching. And I thought I would remind people of what Rupert said in the preface about that, because it's he said each new understanding dissolves the previous one, only to find itself being dissolved in time. and the potency of the words lies in their dissolving quality. And it seemed to me that that dissolving quality works really at two levels. The first level was particularly evident in the first part that you asked me to look at, the intimacy of experience. Mm-hmm. And so that first level is dissolving old beliefs that are blocking the non-dual understanding. And the second the second dissolving quality, I think, is dissolving even the words, the pointers that Rupert uses, which we use to take us to that understanding. Even they dissolve in time, and that comes through a lot more in the second essay, Happiness is the Highest Spiritual Quality. Mm-hmm. So the intimacy of experiencing is really about dissolving the belief that we're a self, consciousness, living inside a body and inside a world, and recognizing that there is just experiencing, awareness experiencing itself. And the way dissolving works in Rupert's teaching is by asking questions. So we obviously ask questions of Rupert, but he actually asks questions of us quite a lot. I mean, he does it in his books, and he does it in his meetings as well. And of course, he encourages us to ask questions of ourselves. And that's really what this first part is about. It contains loads and loads of questions which we can use to take us not just to an understanding in his words, but to our own wordless understanding of reality. Mm-hmm. So you just, I mean, the way it works is you just read the question, and you just stay wherever it takes it to. You don't necessarily try to answer it. An answer might come, or it might not. But you just stay in that space where the question takes you to. And it's not something that I think you do once. It's something that certainly I found is necessary to go back to it over and over again. Whenever you feel that sense of separation, then you go back to asking those questions and staying where they take you. And the chapter looks at all aspects of experiencing. So the world, like the sound of traffic, the sight of the chair, the body, so bodily sensations, and the mind, thoughts. And really he's encouraging us to ask these three questions about any of those things, any of those aspects of experience. The first one: how close to myself does this hearing, seeing, sensing, or thinking take place? The second question: are some things experienced as being closer than other things? So the chair closer than the moon, for example, or thoughts closer than physical objects. And the third question: is there really any division between myself and experiencing? Or is the apparent division just a construct of the mind? And if we really examine our experience, and we can do it at any time and in any place. And I used to do it a lot when I was out walking, and so I could be walking in nature, and that's great. You ask how close the tree is to you, or how close those mountains are. But you can equally do it in a busy street, or on the train or the bus, or wherever you are. So if you hear the traffic, then how close is the sound of the traffic to me? with people. How close are all these people in the train carriage to me? Are they infinitely close, or is there really no separation? And it's such a powerful technique. And then going on to the next section that you asked me to look at, happiness is the highest.
Jenny, wait.
Sorry.
Can you elaborate on what you just said a little more? Like, if there's a tree in front of me that I'm seeing, how does
Yes.
that, is the activity of seeing the 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 image the has the same seeing the image is coming from or is being noticed from the same place as hearing the traffic? Is that what you mean by that? So,
Yes, that's part of it. If it's if there's just a tree and no traffic, if you're in the beautiful, quiet countryside, then you look at the tree, and all you know of that tree is not a tree out there. All you know of it is the seeing of that tree, and then seeing you realize takes place in the wide open space of awareness. And then supposing, for example, that a lorry comes along the road, a truck, I think you call it, and you hear the sound, and you see the truck. If you listen to the sound and see the truck, is that taking place in a different section of awareness, or is it taking place in exactly the same section? Is there any division between the seeing of the tree and the hearing of the truck and the seeing of the truck? Yeah. And then you can do the same things with your thoughts. So your thought might be, well, this truck is making a horrid noise, and there's a lot of exhaust gas pouring out of it, and that's a thought, and that's a feeling. And so where is that thought and where is that feeling taking place? Is it taking place in the same place as the sound of the truck and the sight of the truck, or is it taking place somewhere else? Is there a kind of subdivision of awareness? And really looking very closely for yourself at that. It's very, very powerful.
Good. Yes, thank you. I just wanted to thank you for that great example, and I wanted to have a sort of an example, tangible sampling
Yeah.
of how to look at that with those two aspects. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So going on to happiness as the highest spiritual practice, and Rupert actually starts by explaining the dangers of turning the non-dual teaching into a religion. And he uses an example from some of the New Age style non-dual teachers who repeatedly say to people, in fact, they don't say much else, some of them, there's nothing to do and nowhere to go. Very, I don't know whether it's popular in the US, but it's very popular in the UK. And you know, a lot of people go along with that, and they go to a teacher and they hear this, and then they come along to Rupert and say, but I feel unhappy. You know, I know now there's nothing to do and nowhere to go, but I'm still unhappy. And really what Rupert is saying is he explains that it's actually quite correct that if we are entirely happy, then indeed there is absolutely nothing to do. But if we are unhappy, it's because we believe that we are a separate self. And that separate self will inevitably search for happiness. It can't do anything else. He actually said, I'll read this sentence, and I think this is quite important. It is not that the apparent separate entity searches for happiness, but rather that the apparent separate entity is the search for happiness. So that search is going to be there. And that searching is something to do. It's something that is being done and will inevitably be done, whether the search goes to the right sort of places or whether it doesn't.
Yes. Henrik, that is on page 171. Happiness is the highest spiritual practice. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm afraid I can't give you page numbers because I've got this very old original, the original edition of that book, which is different from yours, has a different cover, and yes, totally different page numbers I've discovered.
Okay.
But anyway, so if as an apparent person we think there's nothing to do, he says we're deluding ourselves, and that non-duality has become our new religion, and that really isn't helpful for anyone, because they're not going to find happiness that way. So we're unhappy. If we're suffering, there is something to do, and that's to investigate the reality of the separate self that we feel ourselves to be, and which we feel is suffering, both at the level of the mind and also particularly in terms of feelings at the level of the body. And I think Rupert's also using this example to illustrate that the direct path teaching is very individual. The answers he gives depends very much on where the questioner is in his understanding. I went to a meeting of his in Oxford last night, and that was very, very apparent there. Some people he knew very well, and he answered based on where he knew they were in their understanding. Others were completely new to the non-dual teaching, and so he started really from a different place. And he says the true teaching is always spontaneous and can assume a great variety of forms to suit the needs of the moment. And there was a wonderful incident at one of Rupert's retreats 2 or 3 years ago, and I asked a question. I got an absolutely beautiful answer from Rupert, which I understood perfectly. It was absolutely right, made sense. But his mother, who was also there, put up her hand and said, Rupert, I think what you've just explained to Jenny isn't right. And she then went on to explain her a similar experience, and it sounded similar in words to what I had described. And Rupert then said, well, no, the answer I gave to Jenny was the right one for Jenny, and the answer I'm giving to you now is the right one for you. Right. And then he turned to everyone else and he said, look, this is important. This is a lesson for everyone. You must ask your own questions. Even if you think the same question has already been asked, then the answer may not be right for you. You need to ask your own questions. So I think that was really important.
Yeah, that was good.
So we use the words he gives us to take us to the understanding that's already present within us, but it's inexpressible in words. But then we need to drop the words, because if we don't drop them, if we hang on to them, then the teaching does tend to become a religion. And he says the words are just the packaging of the teaching. They're important, but only insofar as they lead back to their place of origin. And as such, and in the hands of a skillful and sensitive teacher or friend, a very wide variety of means and expressions will be used, including expressions that would seem to condone the apparently separate entity and the apparently separate outside world. And he talked a bit more about that at the end of the last retreat I went to, and he explained that a teacher has no set of rules or set of practices or set of ideas. He just comes completely empty, and it's the questions and the problems and the doubts that we all have, and that we bring to the retreat that actually create the teaching. So there's no fixed syllabus, there's no fixed words, no fixed no fixed ideas. And I think that's why questions are so important, not just the questions that we ask Rupert, but the questions we ask ourselves. And if we make statements to ourselves like I'm not this body, I'm not this mind, it somehow closes things down. But if we turn it into a question, what is it that knows my experience? What has been with me and remained with me and remained the same all my life? That creates a gap, a silence, in which the understanding can unfold very, very naturally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we're not asserting anything, and we're not attacking our beliefs and doubts. We're just asking a question, mm-hmm. and that produces the openness that's needed for understanding to arise.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he says the true teaching is not in the words, it's in the love and understanding from which the words proceed and with which they are permeated. Mm-hmm. I think that's probably all I need to say.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's the words that inspire the teaching. Also, the words inspire the openness to see and to know. And you could, I know you could say much more on the topic of happiness and how happiness does play. You know, everyone's in search of happiness. You ask 10 people what they want in life, and I'll bet you all 10 would say, I just want to be happy. You know, and it doesn't always mean that money is going to do it, or relationship, or good health. If you're happy wherever whatever your situation is. That's the true. That's why I think this title, happiness is the highest spiritual practice. You know, drug addicts, they just want to be happy. So give me a quick fix and I'm happy for 5 minutes, you know? Well, thank you for sharing from those two spots in this chapter, Jenny. And we all value your presentation and your participation. Thank you. And we also have Kimberly. I see that Kimberly is in the house. Hi, Kimberly. You're here with us. I'm going to unmute the mic for just a minute so you can say hello. Hello to everyone.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hi, Kimberly.
Hello, Kimberly.
Hi.
Welcome.
Hello. Thank you. I'm glad it's not my turn yet because I'm still driving.
Yeah, you're fourth. You're fourth. I'm going to mute your mic back and just wanted to welcome you to the group. All right. Thank you, dear.
Okay.
Love you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Just wanted to let everyone know that. And next we have Anneke. She's going to share from the intimacy and immediacy of the now. I love this, and I love that it was given to you. And also Anneke is going to share from the light of knowing. So Anneke, thank you for joining us. The mic is all yours.
Thank you. What Jenny just told about seeing the tree is happening at the same place as the sound of the truck and everything. One could say that in that the dimension disappears. So it all happens here, but here is placeless, has no location. It's all, in a way, becoming flat, yet never-ending, infinite, widely open, endless. So that was beautiful. And in the intimacy and in the immediacy of now, one could say, is spoken about timelessness. And I love that, because the whole book, of course, continuously addresses body, world, mind, but also timelessness, dimensionlessness, no separation, no limitation. So it's, even in the book, it's seamlessly one. It doesn't actually matter which chapter you begin, although it matters. But in the end, when I received the book, I told that before I started with the last chapter, because I was just, happy to read that, and I felt so touched. And one of the parts of the last chapter is the intimacy and immediacy of now. And it's what Jenny also said, that without the words, without the names, without the labels, but just the direct experience, the immediacy of now, that is timeless. I am that timeless now. I am always present. I, conscious being, am always present, always here, infinite, indivisible. And Rupert offers us these meditations, yoga meditations, practices. Somebody was asking about practice. He doesn't call it practices so much, but Jenny, correct me if he does, but more like contemplations, explorations, and asking ourselves these questions to know out of our own experience that what he speaks of is the truth. Mm-hmm. And so we don't have to believe it, because the other side of belief is doubt. I would like to share you a little sideway, because when Byron Katie, some of you might know her, when she woke up, she had no idea of non-duality, but people started to come up at her door and saying, namaste, namaste. And she had no idea what they were saying. And she heard them say, no mistake, no mistake, no mistake. And that is so perfect, because once we, I want to say it differently, I, consciousness, plays, dances as this seeming separation and limitation, as one could say the prodigal son, needing to leave the kingdom, going on this journey. But it's also I, awareness, conscious being, taking seemingly itself back into itself. And that is also the surrender he speaks of in this chapter. And to discover that now is what I am, that I can enter the now through the phenomena, when I just rest in the moment, maybe even at first as mindfulness, but resting in the moment. And once I know that I am awareness, this moment and I blend into one being. There is no difference whatsoever. So either I enter the now through mindfulness, but what I have noticed is that because I know that I'm awareness itself, there immediately is no difference between the phenomena and what I really am. Because anything that arises out of awareness is made out of it. And so when I rest back, that is revealed. And maybe I say it a little bit difficult, but right here, right now, I find myself, and all is revealed to be the same. And Rupert's body meditations, for instance, help us to explore that there is no division between the skin of our body and the open, empty being that I already am. So he also says in this chapter that this cannot be done by mind. So mindfulness is actually a horrible word because it is the big mind, the open, empty mind of being, the impersonal mind, arising and dancing as this diversity and all these minds and worlds and perceptions and everything. But going back, so to say, cannot be done by mind because it is incomprehensible. It is nameless. It is dimensionless, timeless. And mind is all about dimension and time and seeming separation. So what I also discovered when contemplating now, just by being now, that it is I consciousness speaking, but I consciousness also hearing. So who is speaking and who is listening? Who is seeing the tree and what is the tree? And that all blends into one, not that it needs to blend because it's already made out of one and the same, but that's what we discover. Or let me say, that's what I am gradually discovering. And it took years because I tried to figure it out with my mind. I wanted to see, I said that before, I wanted to see that everything is made out of me. Well, it didn't work. I was working very hard. But as soon as I started to rest back into what I really am and staying there, asking the one that knows, which is I consciousness, then it started to reveal itself that there is only the one. And of course, by times, I'm not seeing it or I'm not contemplating, or I find what Jenny says is great, that every time you feel separate, you ask yourself those questions. I'm not always doing that because the old movement out to the objects is a very ingrained habitual movement. And it's very frustrating and disillusionment to try to find that which I long for in the phenomena which come and go. So the now, he says, you can't find it with mind, and it is a resting back. And I once checked with him and I said, it's like an octopus, see, that has all these arms out into the world. And you try to grab, and there's a lot of grabbing going on. But when all these arms are withdrawn and attention does not go to the phenomena, and attention does not want to grab hold of and so forth, then this resting back and no longer paying attention to the phenomena, that's where I am. Mm-hmm. But you could also say when there are thoughts, trace them back. Trace them back. Where did they originate from? Where does that thought arise from? And then you drop into silence. And that very silence is now, and it is what we are. And by saying we, we're not referring to the personal we. We refer to the I that is all of we. That's weird said. So that's what I also notice in the book club, that every time we help each other remember that who do we refer to when we say I? Mm-hmm. Who do we refer to? And that's very helpful because I forget. And I don't always speak from that, although every word comes from that. So it's always such a mystery. Mm-hmm. So the direct experiencing of now, the immediacy of now, reveals that what we really are is this now. So mind wants to go elsewhere. It wants to think. It wants to think its way out. It wants to, from lack, from this sense of fear of death, it always wants to go out, which is always into the world. It's the octopus. And in the immediacy of now, there is this, very intimate, very touching. I go for a decaf coffee every day for a walk, and then I end up on a terrace, and I practice like that, just like Jenny, while walking. I'm checking if I'm still here, if everything is here, if it's now, and so forth. And then I sit on the terrace and I just have to cry because it's closer than close. And I really have worked my ass off to find it in the world. And then it appears to be right here, right now, in the timeless, in the dimensionless, which is at the same time wider than wide. Mm-hmm. And that brings me to another page I just wanted to mention, page 187. That's where Rupert describes even more intimately what that is, living the immediacy of now. So I just wanted to mention that. Mm-hmm. And of course, it's living the now is related to surrender. That's also so wonderful, that we can either surrender by abiding as what we are, as this now, seeing that it's all experienced here and that we are this here-ness, or those parts of me that still feel like a separate me, or that have those energies within the residues. You could also say, here it is. I don't know what to do with it. I have no idea. Here it is. Offer it to this fire of love, and you take it all. Because as long as I feel separate, there is a you, or a consciousness, or a being, or God, whatever we call it, to offer it to. And either way is beautiful. It ends up showing, revealing we are not in control. It's an impersonal dance of being, and also being a me. So being is meing. So that's, but that was not my chapter, surrender. So I'll leave that to the next person.
And that also gives you the intimacy of the experience.
Yes.
Of now is really connecting with the impersonal nature of it, and the intimacy of the now. Also, it infers that there's no past and there's no future.
Yes.
There's only this present moment.
Yes.
That's not even a time-based. It's only a word to say that it's not time-based. It's just present. Yeah.
Yes. And mind goes to future and past, but you know what I also love, and that has to do with surrender, and with this whole book and the whole teaching, that the inclusion of all of life, of all of myself, with a chapter M, to slowly see that how it arises, what I consciousness can be, is made out of what I am. And that's for me a very gradual process. It's like his teacher Francis Lucille said, that you can be awake but not yet established in that. And I feel awake, but there's definitely residues,
and very normal across all levels of awakening. And and I feel that this group that we're all sharing represents that strata. That we're all the same, and we all have, including Rupert. Rupert tell you in his retreats. I love that. I said this in a previous video conference where I just loved it when Rupert at the Garrison retreat, he said, this woman said, "I'm not where you are," and he said, "Well, let me tell you where I am. A mosquito bit my foot, and I want to scratch it. I'm a little bit hungry."
Yes.
And it's hot in here. He sort of laid no difference in any of them.
Yeah.
We're all the
Sages see the same as we do, only they made what it's made of and from where they're looking and what they are. But he also explained one time in a webinar, it's like a flat, like a skyrise with an elevator. And sometimes the teacher comes down to the cellar with the elevator, and trying to get that person to come up or take the stairs step by step by step by step. And sometimes somebody steps into the elevator right on top. I mean, it's and we explore the body, the world, and the mind. That is not in I don't know if you call it sequence. Not first the mind, then the body, then the world. It's all of it. It's zooming in, zooming out. resting back as what I am, abiding and exploring. And it's not fixed because it is everything, so it's free. I am everything. It's sometimes difficult to say.
Anneke,
and then
the light of knowing. What is your way on the light of knowing?
He speaks of the halfway, that awareness, knowing the objective world is halfway. But at a certain point, we come to see that what we are only sees itself. So when we explore the body, it's open and empty. And the world is open and empty, yet we still see it dance. But awareness only sees itself. And I find that a little bit more difficult to speak of because I'm more in the midst of that. Doing the yoga meditations of Rupert, seeing that the body is just sensations and feelings dancing in emptiness, and when they expand and they flow, and there is only that. And that light of knowing, the sun is what he describes. The sun doesn't see a moon. The moon is only seen when still believing we are a separate entity. But I have to be really honest. I'm exploring that more in depth. And sometimes Rupert says that there is only knowing, and I just can't get that. But when you say there's only being, I'm in. You know, that it's what I am, life is.
Yes.
Or when I can see, oh, there is experiencing and there's here-ness and now, and but to say, oh, I know the light of knowing is the only light there is, and there is only knowing, I have to keep my mouth shut because that's not completely my own experience yet. But I am grateful that the discovery that all there is to life is what I am. And I was tempted to say, oh, what I am is all of life, but I, awareness, don't see anything else than I am. So you could also speak of it in a different way, to take the body or the world or objects and to see they're made out of me. And that's a difference.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to add anything, welcome.
Well, you can see that from where you're speaking, that awareness is aware of itself, and
yes,
that is the experience that I feel that all of the guest hosts have realized, that awareness has revealed itself, and it seems to me that it's ever unfolding. I get so excited about getting
so great.
It goes on. Yes,
it keeps growing. It's never boring. It's never stale. And also the coolest thing about this teaching is it doesn't get old. It doesn't.
No. It's ageless.
It stays fresh
because we are.
And it's an ongoing revelation of the nature of this experience.
Yeah, but it's because it's called the infinite possibilities. It can be anything, and it is.
Yes.
And it dances as all of this, the separation and horror and forgetting and whatsoever, and in the meantime just seeing itself, because that's also a great question of Rupert. When you doubt something, you ask yourself, I, consciousness, what do I think of this experience? What do I see?
Mm-hmm.
No, it becomes quiet. That's great.
Yeah.
So if anybody else has to say more about the light of knowing, very welcome.
Anyone wants to say anything? You have any, if there's anyone on the call in that would like to put your hand up, it's *2. And we are going for an hour and 15 minutes today, since we have so many on the panel. Just to let everyone know, we still have 30 minutes left. We have plenty of time to hear from Arthur and Andrea and Kimberly. And thank you for sharing, Anneke. I so appreciate you being on this group and that we were able to meet in this way, and look forward to many more times of sharing. Thank you. Andrea, I asked you to look at today for the group, for the talk, sharing from which self is being inquired into.
Well, let's see now. Which one would it be? This one or this one?
Yes.
So anyway, I love this, and in last week's chapter, it's interesting that I was doing that with studied that with you online last week, and one of the things that was in that chapter that I want to refer to, because it kind of set it up for this. And what I'm going to share is what Ginny shared, what Anneke shared. It's all interwoven so beautifully. That's why it's all included in this chapter, because in the end, it's not going to me, it doesn't feel like any of us are going to say anything actually any different. We're all coming to the same place. And one of the things it was on, I think it was at page 120, 128 or 178. Let me see here. Yeah, I guess it was on 128. That Rupert was saying that there's never two things in an experience.
Yeah.
There's never two things. Now that's oneness. There's never two things. So there's the self that we think and feel ourself to be, that kind of goes in search. That's the one that does the investigation. It investigates into what seems to be oneself. And that investigation actually leads us into the realization of our true self, which is the same self. There's not two selves, because there can't be two things in any experience. Mm-hmm. And the way that he set that up is, in talking about the I, the I is the name, that we give to whatever it is that is knowing the experience. And so that awareness in that knowing is part of the element, or the essence of the awareness in the presence that is doing the investigation. And it's also the awareness in the presence of the one who thinks it's looking for itself. It's both present, because one is asking a question, and the self is actually leading itself to itself by the question. It sounds a little convoluted the way I may be saying it, but to me it makes perfect sense. So, and so this knowing presence is always part of everything, and it is everything, and it's all appearing within that. And so it's the I am that knows it is I am. And then one of the times that I was just sitting in contemplation of this, what came to me is I am, I am. I know I am. I know I am. I am. And it just kept going on for like an hour. It just kept playing between I know and I am, kept going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth until the tears came in my eyes. And it was like something just completely collapsed between the one who was saying it, the one who was hearing it, the one that was understanding it, the one that was dissolving. And I would offer that to anybody to try and just say, I am, I am. I know I am. I know I know. I know I am. I know I am, I am. And keep playing with those words back and forth. And it broke through something for me. And so the one that was that presence and that knowing that's inherent in awareness itself and in the presence was like right there. But Rupert broke it down in the chapter in the sense of sort of how to look at that, as he said, 3 possibilities.
Yes.
Yeah. And the first possibility being mind and body, which is the I that we think we are. And then the witness of things, which can also turns into the wisdom and the awareness. And the third thing, aware presence, which really provides the clarity for it all to unfold and be revealed.
Yes.
As the same self, appearing or seeming and thinking that it's separate, and having all those feelings around that. So the position of the first self is this talked about as being in the ignorance, and not meaning in the intellectual ignorance. But I love, even in ignorance, is that word ignore, starts that word. Yeah. So it's easy for me. I always like to look at, because the words can be really fun to play with. And they always have, I think it's like leaving little breadcrumbs for ourselves along the way. We create language that within the language, we leave ourselves our clues as well. Because awareness is always knowing itself and seeing itself and revealing itself to itself. And these in the words and things are other ways in which that can happen. So this ignoring, we're just sort of overlooking the seamlessness of the intimacy of this awareness is so as we say, we are closer than close, as in the last chapter. Anneke said the same thing. Ginny's saying the same thing. It's just so, it's just this one thing. There's not two things. It's this intimate experience. And so it's could be easy to overlook the very fact that there's this presence that's aware of everything. And so we go from that, and then we add in, and then the second one, which is the witness, which seems like something separate, looking at objects and things and whatever, actually becomes the wisdom and the understanding of what it's looking at and what it's perceiving. It starts to understand it. It's like for instance, today, just before I was coming upstairs, I'd finished with a client and I wanted to be ready for today. And I came upstairs and I had something. I said, "Oh, thank you." I said, "You always remember everything." And then I stopped and I was like, that didn't seem right to me anymore, because I was talking to something else. I was objectifying something. I was objectifying my awareness as something separate from myself. And as soon as I said it, I went, "No, I always remember." And the minute I said, "I always remember," I can't explain it in words other than say that there was some shift that happened in me that felt so natural and comfortable. And it's like, I could say owning it, owning myself, owning that awareness is not something that I need to talk to and have this relationship with. Something collapsed in me in that moment. And as I'm listening today, I'm hearing the unfoldment of that in everything that's been shared, and in what self is being inquired into. And even because I've been doing this, and it's so funny, Bill, because the first time I ever was online with you, the first chapter you gave me was self-inquiry, and then another chapter comes up and it's about self-inquiry, and now here you said you randomly chose one, and I had to laugh to myself when I saw it. I said, "Who's the self that's inquiring into?" And I said, "Holy crap, it's me!" So it keeps being given to me because, we can say, "Oh, you go out into the world looking for things," or, we go into, but the world is me too. So I'm just looking more deeply into myself. It's like the world isn't separate from me. I'm not going away from me when I'm looking into the world. That's what that's what is really clear to me now. It's all me. And everywhere I look, there's an opportunity to see myself and understand something and get clearer about it. And I don't have to go, "Oh, I don't want to go into the world to look at that." It's like, well, why not? That's part of me too. And it's going to if you're looking at a tree, that's in the world. And, Jenny used that as an example. Traffic is in the world. But each one of those things revealed the self to itself. And you feel it all occurring in that awareness. It doesn't feel like there's something occurring outside of me anymore. It's like, in some cases, Rupert called like the field of awareness. It's all right there.
Well, the activity of mind is always is always occurring, or at least it seems to be the activity of mind. And the inquiry reveals what's always there that doesn't speak. It doesn't have a thought. It doesn't even have an experience. It's just aware of all of the experience. So the inquiry, in my mind, is just a tool, like Jenny was saying, that you lose the need for words. The words will dissolve, and the inquiry actually dissolves because it is the tool that's used for the revealing of what's always. It's the screen that's always present and never not. And I think of the inquiry as a very useful tool that that exposes or quiets the mind. It quiets the activity so that present is just
present.
known.
Still present. It's but I feel that sometimes in the self-inquiry we can get into getting stuck in the mind, and the mind is coming up with its own questions and spinning around inside of itself and kind of just like the little ferret on the wheel. It doesn't actually get anywhere. So for me to do the meditations with eyes closed and really experiencing thoughts and sensations and bringing things into this field of awareness and knowing in that moment that my experience shows me through the investigation, if I go deeper past mind's ideas of asking questions and then the mind answering the questions, I don't want the mind to answer the questions. I want the experience to show me literally that there's no distance between the idea of myself and myself. The idea of myself is coming out of that, and that everything is included in that, and that for that experience of not having any distance, you start to really, really genuinely feel the intimacy of everything. Not having any two things in the experience, that I'm the only thing in the experience. And I don't mean me physically, Andrea, but even that's in the experience too. Yeah. And it is past the words for me, but I have a very, very clear sense of that I'm not this separate entity moving around in the world. It really does feel so inclusive to me. Yeah. And, I don't feel like it's located inside my head, inside my body, that me is there. It isn't that. And I don't feel limited by my thoughts. I don't feel limited by my circumstance. I don't feel like I'm looking for happiness. I genuinely feel, I would say 90+% of the time, I'm happy. Mm-hmm. And my mind's going, well, what are you happy about? I'm just happy, babe.
Move on, because we still have two people to hear from, and thank you for sharing from that subject in the which is what was that one? That was the who?
Self. See, I got you so confused. Self. You don't even know there's two selves anymore. Now you just know there's one.
Wired into, yeah. Thank you for sharing from there. And we're going to listen to Kimberly. I don't know if Kimberly can hear us. Can you hear us, Kimberly? I'm going to unmute your mic, and you're going to be up. The mic is all yours. Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Are you still driving?
Okay. I'm not driving.
Oh, good.
I do have a meeting. I didn't realize this went till 1:15, and I have a meeting that I have to go to, so I'm going to speak and be kind of brief.
Okay, let's be brief.
Which is probably good.
Thank you.
So thank you, and thank you, everybody.
Yes.
Yes, Bill.
Yes, I was just going to say that you're going to speak on I am something, nothing, or everything. The mic is all yours.
Yes. Thank you. So I'm just interested just in that, the title of that section. And when I listen to Rupert's replies or responses to questions, he will often explain that we have, essentially 3 options, 3 ways of experiencing our experience. And this essay, or this explanation, is of just that, the 3 options that are always available. And I think it was Jenny who was talking about the power of a question, of asking ourselves a question. And when I read this section, I became aware of how fearful I am, how fearful the mind-made sense of self is in asking some questions, because the inquiry that results from asking the question threatens the sense of self. And so sometimes it's not even getting the answer necessarily, but in my experience, just asking the questions. For instance, Rupert says in here, where does he say? He basically is saying, ask yourself, what is my experience as something, as an object? What is my experience as not an object, as nothing, as not a thing? And when he says, what is your experience? He says basically, go to those experiences, go to. I had a lot of resistance to that because I've been trying so hard, my little separate sense of self has been trying so hard not to be something. And so it got kind of offended. It's like, we're not practicing being something because we're trying to be a good little separate self and a good little non-dual separate self, and we don't want to be something. So that was a very helpful thing to realize, that the ego thoughts, we're basically co-opting non-dualism. It was kind of funny. And then it is kind of funny. And then nothing, being nothing, is very threatening. And I feel like that's where I'm finding myself more and more, is in this no thingness, which is not non-dual. I'm still very much in a neti experience of noticing, oh, I'm mistaking myself for this thing or that thing. And then Rupert says, try on being everything. And it's the most upsetting for a separate sense of self, because as we all know, because we've all talked about it and we've all tried to bring ourselves with us to this, non-objective experience, and it's impossible. And I feel like I am something, nothing, or everything. just the title is, it's a description of my, and I'm sure it's not just mine, but in this moment of my process with these teachings. And I feel like at any given moment, I'm somewhere on that spectrum of I'm something, I'm nothing, or I'm everything. And I only become aware that I'm everything when I'm no longer everything. When I know myself as everything, the one which can point to that and say, "Ooh, look, mommy, look at what we just did." That one is not present. So I love being everything, and that has that is not my consistent place of being. And then the only other thing about this section that I thought was fantastic. I mean, the whole thing is fantastic, but at the very end, Rupert says, truly, the only experience that convinces us that we are on to the truth is happiness. And there's such simplicity there. And I think sometimes all of this can be very heady, cerebral, and difficult to speak about and to think about. But as you pointed out, Bill, you could ask any one of the however many billion of us there are, what do you want? And we all want to be happy. So that, it's beautiful how simple this truly is. So that's my take on it.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you, Kimberly. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
And
Thank you so
well
much.
expressed. And I know you have to go to a meeting. Thank you for hanging on and staying with us and being on our guest today.
Thank you. I love you all so much.
Thank you,
Kimberly. You so much.
Thank you, dear.
All right. Ciao.
I'm going to mute your mic. You can stay on as long as you want. Thank you for coming. Oh, that was great. Yeah, she's Kimberly in a little bit of she didn't realize we were going an hour and 15 minutes. And thank you for staying with us so that you could share with us, Kimberly. And we have a few comments on the chat board I just want to acknowledge. And I love what Catherine McInnes said at the top here. The answer to my inquiry shows up seamlessly without words and more as always knowing. It's really a great comment there. And thank you, Hillary, for your comments also. I like to ask myself the question, what is it in me that never changes? And thinking mind seems to immediately cease. So that's what the whole idea of inquiry is to call the mind into a place of such a deep investigation that it just removes the mind. Mind can't answer some of these inquiries, and many of them, and that's what stills it, to have the investigation reveal the changeless self of presence, of being. And I look forward to hearing now, Anneke, for some reason your mic is muted. Maybe you've done that over there on your side, but your mic is muted. I don't have a mic for you. And Arthur, you are going to be the last guy. You're going to be the, what do you call that in baseball, where the guy like clears all the bases? You're going
cleanup hitter.
Huh?
The cleanup hitter.
Cleanup hitter. You're going to be the hitter, Arthur.
Or the closer if he's a pitcher.
Yes. Thank you, Arthur, for being with us. I just love you, man. You're such a reflection of my own self. Literally, look at Arthur. Calling in, Arthur and I have the same hairdresser. Only he's my younger brother. Thank you for being with us, Arthur. And the two topics that you are going to close with are surrendering everything to presence, and there are no problems. The mic is all yours.
Surrendering everything to presence.
Yeah.
I'm always looking for a practical application. So I, for lack of a better word, improve. So the first paragraph says, sometimes we may not feel like undertaking the detailed investigation of the I thought or the I feeling into experience. For me, in the beginning of this practice, the I thought and I feeling, I had to take into a long meditation before I could even get to the sensation. And from there, to be able to drift into the aware presence that surrounds the sensation. So there wasn't a practicality to this for me. It was a practice I set up morning and evening daily and still do. But at such times that we aren't going to do this longer practice, we may simply surrender everything to aware presence that we intimately know ourselves to be. And this is the practical part, because I can always find myself lost in the separate self for short periods or whatever it may be. And the recognition of this, when I'm lost in the separate self, allows me to release it. So the surrendering may take two forms. If it is obvious that we are open, empty, space-like aware presence, we can just be and rest in this presence. We stand knowingly as the present. However, and this is what I find works practically for me, if we seem to be something other than presence, if we think and feel that we are a separate inside self, surrendering may be a little more active. We may take the form of an offering. We may offer all thoughts, feelings, emotions to this presence. So even for a very short period, I may be stuck in that point of view or thought. Once I realize where I am, I can just pause. I can stop, and I can offer all this, whatever the all this is, to presence. Mm-hmm. That allows me to drift back into that quiet stillness. And this is the practical practice for me all the time. So in the practical practice, we do one of two things. We take the stand as, or we offer to awareness. And the whole practice as a whole needs to be consistent. The deep practice of taking the I thought and feeling into experience, and the practical practice. But when we're consistent with it, the last paragraph of this section comes up. The body, mind, and world are simply surrendered, and in their own time, they become infiltrated and pervaded by the transparency, openness, emptiness, and intimacy of our own being. The fears, anxieties, and tensions that characterize a separate inside self slowly dissolve into the transparency, not through effort, discipline, or manipulation of the body or mind, but effortlessly and spontaneously. When we're consistent, awareness starts to reveal itself to us and permeate our experience. The peace that we are. It starts to do the work for us. That's the effortlessness. And it's beautiful.
So Arthur, that I want to go back to something that Jenny shared when she was talking, and Andrea sort of touched on it, Anneke touched on it, and now you're touching on it again. And it's the effortless allowing that seems to have taken a new age signature of I don't need to do anything. there's nothing to do. And even the Course has a section that says, I need do nothing. And I feel that the background of awareness is and presence, and what you're speaking of, effortless experience, that background is the only thing that needs do nothing. That is the pervading nature of being that needs do nothing. Otherwise, there is an activity that takes place. There is an action, a shift where you shift. You allow. It's more of an allowing. But otherwise, the background of the screen, the background of being, needs do nothing.
Right. When I mention effortless, I mean by manipulation. I need manipulate nothing.
Right.
But there's a doing. By allowing, I'm doing.
Yeah.
By being present, I'm doing. But I'm not manipulating. I don't have an agenda. I've taken the personal I out of it. So doing nothing is just an excuse to do nothing.
Yeah. That's what Jenny was talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the next section, there are no problems. On the fourth paragraph down, the first sentence says, a problem is always one imaginary part or object wrestling with another. And Rupert talks about space. Like, so somebody just wants they ask me a basic question, and I'll always say, well, my attention when I'm seeing, but I won't use the word experience. I'll say when I'm seeing, I see all objects, whatever it may be in the room. So I can turn my attention from the objects to the space, just as a practice of turning my attention away from the objects of experience to awareness. So Rupert talks about throwing a ball through space. There's nothing in the space to resist it. And the space doesn't even have a mechanism to resist it.
Right.
An object has to arise to resist it. And that is all our pain and suffering. When something arises, we resist it. It's always the resistance of the present moment. I'm not happy with the present moment, so I will seek happiness tomorrow. So I will either be happy present moment, or I'll be happy not now. Because if it's not the present moment, it's not now. So all these arisings within our awareness, they're coming up to say hello, to be loved, to be welcome. I think it was Francis who said, it might have been Rupert, but be willing to live with it forever. That's the welcoming, that's the loving. Because it's when it's not resisted, it will dissolve back into itself. And everything dissolves back into something bigger than itself because everything is a thought. But when it's not a thought, it just dissolves back into where it came from love. Love arises, takes its form, does its dance, and dissolves back into itself. So it's just resistance of the present moment. It's not hard, but it needs to be. It needs to be practical, and I, as a separate self, need to be consistent. So, but I'm not trying to get rid of the separate self. That's just another form of resistance. Yeah. I'm just being. I'm just turning away from objects of experience to the truth. And the more I'm at truth, the more truth is revealed.
Yes.
Easy peasy.
Easy peasy. Okay. Everyone except Arthur, final words. Jenny, final words for closing.
I think the last thing I quoted, it's so beautiful. The true teaching is not in the words, it's in the love and understanding from which the words proceed and with which they are permeated. And that's beautiful.
Nice. Very nice. Thank you. Thank you. Anneke, final words?
At the heart of experience is a fire that burns all we know, that turns all things into itself. Offer everything to this fire. This fire is the experience of peace and happiness for which all things are destined and from which all things proceed. It is that for which we have longed all our life, and we find it here, shining at the heart of all experience. Moving.
Nice.
What a man.
What awareness.
Yeah, I know, but nevertheless.
Andrea,
Okay.
final words?
Love.
Yes.
My final word. Love, happiness.
Awareness is, and we cease to speak. And thank you all being co-hosts on this beautiful book club. I so appreciate your participation and your enthusiasm, your interest, and your understanding. I just love how presence just brought all of us together in this way, and we're from all around the globe, from the UK, from the Netherlands, from Cape Cod, from Boston, and I'm up in Maine, and Kimberly's Martha's Vineyard, and our callers and visitors that have joined us from all around the world. And thank you all for joining with us in this book club. And I'll send an email out for the next book club once I know when it is. It's definitely going to be one starting in October for part 2, for volume 2 of this series. And then I'm thinking about one in August as a call-in only. And until we meet again,
Bill, I want to thank you for the invitation, for the creation of the club, for inviting us to join in and be in this awareness together and being reflections of each other and appreciating all of the beautiful nuances of all of our awarenesses and how they just dance together and laugh with each other and cry with each other and feel each other and experience the one self that we all are. And I really appreciate you doing that.
Yes. No mistake.
Yeah, no mistake.
Mindful of mess.
Bye, everyone. Until we meet again, I'll see you then.
Thank you.